Are you wondering how you're going to ace your next UX interview now that the entire tech world has gone remote? Well, keep on watching for tips and tricks on how to present your best self in a remote setting. Hey everyone, if you're new to my channel, my name is Han and I am a senior product designer here in Toronto. I've been making YouTube videos for about 2 years now. I'm currently on parental leave right now and capturing some of the memories over on my personal channel. If you'd like to check that out, I'll link it down below. And I've been a UX designer for about 6 years. Now in that time, I've done a fair share of interviewing folks for different positions in my current company and previous. Obviously with everything happening in the last year with the pandemic, we've gone fully remote with our interviewing process. And as someone that was on the other side of the interviewing, so as in I was conducting the interview, I have some tips and tricks to help you present yourself in the best light as if you were in person and make sure that there's no technical hiccup that will hinder your ability to snatch that job. All right, let's head on to the first tip. This is what I'm going to call the logistics portion of this video. So that means everything that has to do with how the interview is conducted from a technical standpoint. Remember, this is your first impression for the employer. I'm sure you've probably had a phone call, like a phone screen, but this is your first chance to make a visual impression. And this is your chance to be very intentional about the look or the presence that you want to put forward and, you know, present to this potential future employer of yours. And for sure, you want them to be able to see you and hear you. First and foremost, how will they see you? Well, through your camera. Most of the time, your laptop camera will suffice. You don't need to connect a fancy webcam or anything of that nature. Obviously, familiarize yourself with the software that they're using to meet. So either that's Google Meet or Zoom. There's different options on there that you can change settings of to really make your camera crisper and, you know, look very, very sharp. From your end though, something that you should make sure is that you're getting light source from behind your camera. So wherever you are, making sure that you're sitting either in front of a window so that the light is casting this way and not backwards, so that you are lit up appropriately. And another thing to note is, yes, the light source is going to be behind your camera, but making sure that anything behind you is going to be clean and neat. Nothing screams unprofessional more than an unkempt space. And this is not to say that you have to be spotty and you have to, you know, tidy the entire apartment before you get an interview, but just picking a corner, a very intentional corner that is free of clutter. If you have to interview in your room, your bedroom, that's fine. Just make sure you make your bed, or, you know, clearing all the clutter in the background so that you are, again, making this first impression for that potential future employer of yours. Now, just like any interview, you're going to be probably nervous. You're meeting these people for the first time. Even though it is virtual, it is still nerve-wracking. So I would suggest just, you know, logging on a little bit early, or even having your camera on before and practicing what it looks like when you're talking and trying to emulate that interview experience so that you're not sort of caught off guard with like a deer in headlights when you're seeing yourself, you know, for the first time on camera. So that covers the seeing portion. Now you want to make sure they hear you because you're going to be doing a lot of speaking, a lot of storytelling, and you want to make sure that your microphone is tip-top shape. Now I highly suggest, if you can, put in headphones. This just, and if you can, get the ones that plug in so that you don't, you know, mess with Bluetooth and batteries. Just plug it in, it's fine. No one's judging you if you have wired headphones. That's just to ensure that you're hearing correctly all of the questions that are being asked, but then you're also answering, and the other person who's interviewing you can hear you distinctly, free of any background noise or echo that might be in your room. Another thing to note is your internet connection. I, again, really urge you to test it out, you know, maybe even do a test run with a friend. Wherever you choose to conduct your interview, make sure that the internet connection is stable. Again, technology has its hiccups. No one is going to fault you if there is going to be a connection that's unstable, like here and there. But, you know, if that's something that you can troubleshoot ahead of time, and you can even do maybe an Ethernet wired plug-in to your laptop or computer, that's going to be even more safe so that there's not going to be a connection. Okay, now that you've ironed out all of the logistics and made sure that your camera is looking good, your audio is sounding great, internet connection super stable, now to prepare for the remote presentation process. I know there's been a lot of questions about, like, you know, what to put in your portfolio. This video is not going to address that, but it's more so how you should present it given the remote environment now. So with that said, I always advocate for a PDF version of your portfolio when you're presenting. Why? It cuts out the need for internet, so you're not just presenting straight from your portfolio website. There's no need for transitions unless that's what you're applying for, then obviously include that in your presentation. But a PDF will suffice, and the ability to tailor the PDF slides will really make you stand out to your employer, because they feel like you're, you know, putting your all towards this position and you're not just sort of throwing out applications into the universe. So I really suggest a PDF, and that will be, you know, 2 or 3 of your most relevant case studies to the position, and maybe a few slides about yourself. You know, a title page is always really nice to have. I'll make a separate video on what the PDF should include when you are presenting, but just know that a PDF or some sort of static like Google Slide is okay, but again, it relies on an internet connection and sort of this third-party infrastructure that may or may not work that day. Like, let's say Google is down, you're kind of like, crap. So definitely suggest a PDF when you can, and then just share your screen and control it from there. While you're presenting, make sure that you've already practiced this and rehearsed this story that you're going to tell about yourself and your skills many times. So when you do, make sure that you are stopping to ask questions, ask if there's any, you know, points you can clear up, because there isn't that ability for you to read body cues anymore. I mean, not as much as in person. And as we know, 80% of any communication is like not spoken, not verbal, it's body language. Kind of lose that sense in a remote environment. And so making sure that you stop, asking questions, ask our interviewers if, you know, if they're following, are there any questions that they'd like to ask, any points that you can clear up for them, and that actually just makes you that much more mindful and gives them a sense that, you know, you understand and you know what it takes to work in a remote environment, because that's what you have to do. You can't just treat it like in person anymore, because it is a whole different landscape and a whole set of communication skills that are very specific to a remote environment. Another thing to note is to keep your presentation slides brief, so that you can, you know, put in that sort of extra storytelling detail, and that people aren't going to be reading off your slides and then be waiting for you to finish you reading off your own slides. So I would suggest, again, this rule of presentations, you know, using visual imagery, using examples, and then talking about those examples rather than putting chunks of text and then reading off of that, because that's just not really engaging and not very enjoyable experience for the interviewer as well. Although I do talk about, you know, being in a remote environment, you can't really use your body language, but again, like I'm using right now, my hands, expressions on your face, your intonation. So practicing that, where you can, you know, speak sort of clear, concise, making sure that you are projecting your voice and, you know, not talking into your microphone like this, and just, you know, give the interviewer the signals that you are completely ready to be working in a remote environment. You're so, you know, aware of the landscape, make you that much more favorable for the position. All right, and so with most UX interviews, you will have some sort of portfolio presentation portion, and then some will include a whiteboarding section or whiteboarding interview, and that is mostly to test out your collaboration skills as well as your problem solving and process. So some really high level things that you can, you know, do to prepare yourself is ask ahead of time what, you know, type of question will be asked. Maybe they'll tell you, maybe they won't. What type of app or software do they prefer to use for whiteboarding? And so make sure that you familiarize yourself with that software, or suggest a software that you're already comfortable with, and making sure that you know, at least know the basic commands of sketching something out, making boxes. If you don't have the option of using something that you're familiar with, practice beforehand, and that shows again that you're prepared, that you are kind of just going in there, you're not, you know, figuring things out on a software. You're able to just kind of like go in, hit the ground running, much like you would do if you were hired for the position. And again, much like the portfolio presentation, stop, over communicate wherever you can. This is something that you should be doing in person anyways, is when you are whiteboarding and, you know, writing out thoughts. Even though you're writing out the thoughts, let's say in written form, like words and not just images, you should be talking out loud your thought process. So for instance, if you're saying, okay, I'm going to assume that, you know, this is a problem for users of this kind and with this issue. So like you would say that out loud and you would put it on the board, just so that the interviewers understand why you've written this down, why this is a point that's worth even being written down, and how that connects back to your solution or your process and your problem solving. Ask questions. Ask a ton of questions while you're doing this, and that just tells the employer that you know it takes a lot of digging to, you know, get to the root of problems. Now this is a little cheat, I guess, tip that I can share. You can absolutely ask so many things ahead of an interview, and a lot of people don't, because they don't know that they can. And so we always have an outline or something ready for, you know, folks, if they need extra information or anything like that, we're always there to like help support. But sometimes people don't ask, and that's not that we you know, are hiding things or trying to play tricks on people, but it's we do provide an outline, an interview outline. So if you're not getting that, definitely ask for one. Ask for who you're meeting, ask for what the position is, and do some research. I've mentioned this in my previous video about acing interviews, but the same applies in a remote setting, obviously, because there's still people interviewing you. So do your research ahead of time, ask for the interview outline as well as an agenda if they have, and any questions like whiteboarding problem sets that, you know, that is able to be shared ahead of time, or ask the team to say, hey, if we're doing a whiteboarding problem set that is relevant to, like, are you able to provide any research that has been done, real research, so that I can better, you know, whiteboard solutions during the interview. I think that would be a fabulous thing to ask. Although, you know, you might get a no, it's still worth asking, and it's still worth you taking that initiative and showing that initiative and that attention to detail, you know, this interview that you're going. And last but not least, like I mentioned again in my how to ace your UX interview in real life video, be yourself. Present you as you are. Don't pretend to be someone else. Don't try to, you know, just try to be as loose as you can, even though it is a very nerve-wracking experience. But I think that genuineness always shows through, no matter if you're remote or in person. And so if you're able to, you know, construe that and project that genuine and eagerness to join the team, or that interest, I know that always translates really well to the interviewers. And yeah, don't forget that you need to like them as much as they need to like you. So take note of how the interviewers treat you during your interviews, and, you know, really assess if this is a company, a culture, a team that you want to be joining based on what you've seen. This is a really good question, and I think you should ask, is how did the company handle COVID lockdown measures? That is very telling of how agile a company is in moving their operations to remote, if they cared about their employee safety, and, you know, how much they're invested in obviously health and safety, but also just like procedures. And so I think that is a fabulous question for anybody to be asking after this crazy year that we had. So yeah, those are my tips and tricks for hopefully acing your interview in a remote setting. Good luck to anybody that is interviewing out there. I know it is tough, especially because you're gonna be joining teams that you might not, you know, get that full experience of meeting, but this is just, I think, a huge perk of our industry is that we are able to work from home safely, not have to risk the health of our frontline workers, as well as our own family and just the public good. Gives us that flexibility. So now that the job market is a little bit more open because remote work allows you to get jobs all around the world. So good luck to you if you are interviewing. Make sure you use those tips, those secret tips that I just shared, and let me know down below if you have any tips or tricks that you've done in your own remote interviews that has helped you. I love hearing these because sometimes it's the most obvious thing that you just don't think of, and so that's why we have hubs like this, to share these things with each other. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I feel like there's a huge portion of people who watch my videos who aren't subscribed, so make sure you do to catch the next updates, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.